I'm about to trade places with her. I'll introduce her, and then she can answer the question, which indeed I did not answer. I asked, but I did not answer. I want to talk tonight about something very different from Johnson. I want to talk about, although maybe not so different from Johnson. I want to talk about the myths that make us, as a community, as a society, and whether there's a new emerging global myth that we might help midwife, that we might help bring to birth. But in order to do that, I need to talk first about what transformational leadership does, what it works with. And I have 4 theses, you might say, which I'm just going to list at the beginning so you can see the structure of my talk. And there will be an exercise amongst you in the middle of it. So it rests on 4 points. The first is that leadership is primarily about the future. It's about a vision of the future. That's point 1. Point 2, the future is a story, and only a story. Point 3, we can tell better stories. And point 4, there is, I think, an emerging global myth, but it won't come about automatically. So those are the 4 points, and I want to explore those 4 as preparation for what I hope will be a conversation. Let me talk a little bit about the trouble with the future. That is, that we tend to think we can know the future, and the reason that we know the future is that we simply misfile the past into the future. So we walk around with this extrapolation, which we call the future, and it's just an extrapolation. The future could be utterly, completely different. The present that we're experiencing, most of us, unless we are Zen masters and fully in the present, is usually shaped by the future that we're imagining. So if you imagine that you're going to get out of here and go to bed at a reasonable hour, and as opposed to someone showing up and putting you in a plane for Paris, you're sitting here right now would be totally different. So the present is experienced in the light of the past, yes, maybe too much in the past, but also in relation to the future that you're imagining, which mostly we don't imagine very well. So that's the problem with the future. We live in it, some of us amazingly, most of the time, in our fantasies and dreams about the future. But we don't really take responsibility for shaping it, especially not in relation to our society. But that's what leaders do. That's what leaders do. Now, about the future, I want to make a point. I want to make it very strongly that we extrapolate the past into the future. If you wanted to know what would be the future of, say, computers or the radio when it first came out, or the telephone, you would have gone to the experts in the field. And we've all run across these lists of what experts say. For example, Western Union, in an internal memo in 1876, said, "This telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us." Now, these are the people that knew about communication. Lord Kelvin, who was president of the Royal Society in England in 1895, heavier than air flying machines are impossible. Again, these are people, I say this not just to be humorous, but these are the experts you would ask if you wanted to know what the future was. These would be the ones. The founder and chairman of Digital Equipment Corporation in 1977, there's no reason anyone would want a computer in their home. Irving Fisher, professor of economics, Yale University, 1929, stocks have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau. Apparently September or early October. I'm sure you've heard this, another Yale professor commenting on Fred Smith's thesis. Remember, he founded FedEx. But he had this idea in college, and he wrote in business school, and he wrote a paper about it on which he made a C, which in graduate school is like flunking. No one makes a C in graduate school. And the professor wrote on it, "The concept is interesting and well formed, but in order to earn better than a C, the idea must be feasible." Because the professor knew better than this young kid. The idea really was not feasible. I don't disagree with that professor. This is the sense in which we are very conservative about the future. It's why those of us who are older have to just leave the stage so the younger people who don't know as much as we do can actually make things happen. Just a couple of others because I find them interesting. This is Bill Gates in 1981. 640K ought to be enough for anybody. I do like what the commissioner of the U.S. Office of Patents said. He was recommending to Congress in 1899 that they should close the patent office because, he said, quote, "everything that can be invented has been invented." And finally, Harry Warner, Warner Brothers, 1927, "Who the hell wants to hear actors talk?" May still be true, so, I mean, the point is, as I say, that these were not mere commentators. These were the world's best experts talking about the future. No one knew more than they did. So really the only thing we can know about the future is that it will be different from the past. And it will be different in ways that we can't even predict. Because even things that we can predict come together in unpredictable ways. For example, we knew we were flying men to the moon. We knew it would be televised. We had no idea what the combination of millions of people around the world watching this televised moon landing would produce in spirit, in feeling, in the human race. And some people feel that those early pictures of the Earth as seen from space helped to galvanize a global environmental movement. The global, because there were no countries on that beautiful blue pearl. And so these were unexpected things that affected the future. I remember once, I won't go into why, I was standing on a hill in Papua New Guinea with Buzz Aldrin, that's another story, who did go to the moon, but he told me an interesting story. He said that when he came back with Neil Armstrong, because they'd been on the surface of the moon, they were put in a kind of trailer until you could see that they didn't bring back any terrible something that would infect the rest of us. And while they were there, they were shown films of the moon landing. And so Buzz turned to Neil and said, "Neil, we missed it all." But think about it. They really did. They were up there doing a job, A, B, C, a much practiced job. The meaningfulness, the depth of it, they had missed. So he was quite right when he said, "Neil, we missed it all." As a kind of side note to the story, we were there, we were waiting because the Hooley Wigman were going to do a dance for us. And so when the translators pointed to Buzz and said, he's been up on the moon was in the sky, sometimes you can see it during the daytime. He points to the moon and he says, this man, he's been on the moon. And a guy from the line of the Hooley Wigman dancers steps forth. He too had been on the moon. Dreamtime. They made it, they were not so impressed with Buzz Aldrin. They had a guy who'd been on the moon. And there are these appreciations of realities. The future is a reality that's different, can be different from the present. We have it in our power to make it different. So let me go to point 2 then. The future is a story. That's all it is. Just think about it for a minute. It's only a story. It's not here. But the future depends upon the story you're telling about yourself and other people, about your country, about the world. Each of our lives is a collection of facts. And you want to tell the truth. You can't change the facts. I'm a woman. I was born in Texas, Waco even. Nothing I can do about that. All these facts have actually happened. But the facts are embedded in a story. And the plot, or the narrative of that story, is entirely in our hands. The facts have happened to us, continue to happen to us, and we do things in the world, but the narrative we shape. And what happens to you in life happens in relation to the story you're telling, not to the facts. Let me give you an example. I was sitting at a table once at lunch with a friend, and a young man came up. I didn't know him. He knew my friend. And she said, "Oh, how's it going?" He said, "Wonderful." He said, "I got my 24-hour-a-day art school." Now my ears pricked up. Who in the world has a 24-hour-a-day art school? First of all, what parent would let her child go to a 24-hour-a-day art school? I mean, I just went through all the reasons why this couldn't be. Well, it turns out he was a social worker who had always wanted a 24-hour art school, and he was asked to be the chairman during the summer, the director of a school for delinquent boys out in West Texas. Well, all these guys were locked up for 24 hours a day, and he turned it into an art school. I was reminded of this when Matthew was talking. The incidence of breaking windows went down to almost nothing. The sidewalks, he was finally fired because the students drew on the sidewalks with stuff. And, you know, this idea of keeping things non-chaotic, well, it was more chaotic there, but the incidence of violence went way down. Anyway, he had a blissful time with his 24-hour-a-day art school. Now, if someone had come to me and said, "Would you direct the Home for Delinquent Boys in West Texas?" I would not have had the imagination, I think, to have seen that as an opportunity for a 24-hour-a-day art school. But he was telling this story about the possibility of this. So when this came along, that's what he saw out of his story. The facts for me would have been the same as the facts for him, but his story made something happen in it. I was working with someone who was working with a bank in which a vice president who was very discouraged, he was going to leave the bank, although he'd been very successful there, because he had been given the responsibility, but not the power, which often happens in leadership. You're given responsibility, but not the power to make something happen, to do this transformation in the bank. And he said, "Well, everybody's on board, but this one very important vice president, and she thinks it's a ridiculous notion, and she is not going along with it, and it will fail without her." And he was just going to give up. So he said, "Well, I know that you say she's not on your team, but what if you declared her to be on your team? What if you said, not to her, to yourself, she's on my team, what role is she playing? And if she were on the team, what role would she be playing?" And he thought for a minute and then said, "Well, she could probably tell us everything that's going wrong." So he went to her and said, "You know, I know you don't believe in this, Linda, and but would you mind, as we try to roll this out, just telling us everything that's going to go wrong?" And she very gleefully said, "Yes." Well, everyone else was invested in the thing working, and they did not notice the things that she noticed. She ended up being one of the most valuable members of the team. Now, did she change her mind? No. He changed his story about who she was in relation to the project. He didn't change any facts. He didn't persuade her. He changed the story. There is a power of story that is much greater than we are generally aware. And the future is a story. That's what leaders do. Moses, "I see a promised land." Martin Luther King, "I have a dream." The leader articulates a story about the future. And that story, if it is compelling, creates the future because of the people who gather around to help it become reality when they see that future too. So we're all embedded in a story, our own story. I want us to do a little exercise here. And let me explain how to do it before we start doing it, because there'll be a lot of noise, chaos, when you start. I will ask you to find another human being here. Talking to wastebaskets, okay, but probably it's better to talk to a human being because this is a partnership exercise. I'm going to ask you, and I will, to tell the story of your life, pause very quickly, This is not Oprah. This is not True Confessions. When I say the story of your life, I'd like it to be true. I'm going to stop you after a minute or two, so you won't get very far down the road with this story. But I'm going to ask the partner who's listening to you just to listen, not to say, oh yes, that happened to me too, and you know what I'm saying? There's a kind of participation listening. All I'm asking for is just, you can nod, but because when I say switch, partner B will tell the story to partner A. All I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the plot. And you're going to do this 3 times, but with 3 different plots. And what the point is to listen to your story as it comes out and to be aware of your internal feelings, because we'll talk about it a little bit, to listen to your story in each of these 3 narratives. How does it feel? Does one narrative feel true and the other not true? Remember, the facts will be the same, or you may find that a different narrative, you draw out different facts, but the facts will still be facts. So, any questions about the directions at the moment? Okay, just listen for my saying switch, and then when the second partner's, after I say start, and then when I say switch, partner B will tell the story to partner A. Then I'll say stop, and I'll give you the second narrative. So, once you've found your partner, the first narrative is tell the story of your life to your partner as a hero story. Those of you here at Pacifica, I don't need to tell you what a hero story is, but let me just say, not using Joseph Campbell's elegant design, but just say, wherever there's an issue, you overcome it, help comes. You know, it's a hero story in the most rudimentary way. So, clear? Okay, find a partner. Partner A, tell the story of your life to partner B as a hero story. Okay, switch, switch. Did everybody get the message? Maybe I should say stop. Oh, that's better. I just said switch, and I think the message didn't get across. Okay, stop. Now, switch. Partner B, tell the story of your life to partner A as a hero story. Okay, stop. Now, partner A, tell the story of your life to partner B as a victim story. Well, wait. You know the story. A lot of ads on TV. There's a lot of this story going around. I used to do a lot of work with education, the public schools, and as soon as I would walk into the teacher's lounge, I could hear this story by its music, you know. But the victim story is basically, I am the way I am because of what they've done to me. That's the kind of music of it. So partner A to partner B, and again, monitor how you're feeling, what facts arise when you do this, what you have to do to tell this story. So partner A to partner B.